Hello and welcome to this Sophos Certified Training course for Sophos XG Firewall. This is Module 4, Site-to-Site Connections. In many businesses, it's necessary to create secure access between a head office and branch sites, and to give remote and roaming workers access to internal systems and data from anywhere at any time. The Sophos XG Firewall supports this by providing threat-free tunneling using either VPNs or remote Ethernet devices for secure, controlled access to corporate resources over the Internet. VPN protocols work by encrypting the data at one end of the connection, then sending this to the other end where it is decrypted and routed onward to its final destination. In effect, the encrypted data is traveling through a tunnel between the two ends of the connection, where the contents of the data cannot be seen, and Sophos Red provides this in a simple plug-and-play hardware form. In this module, we will look at how to configure both IPsec and SSL VPNs, as well as how Reds can be deployed. XG Firewall supports site-to-site VPNs using two different protocols, IPsec and SSL. IPsec provides a framework of protocols and algorithms that are widely used to provide end-to-end security in wide area networking. IPsec can provide a more secure connection if it is configured correctly. However, it is more complex to configure than SSL. As IPsec is widely used by other network security vendors, it provides greater compatibility if you need to create a VPN with a site that is using hardware from another vendor. IPsec also supports failover groups, so in scenarios where there are multiple internet links that can be used for routing the connection over alternate paths, it can provide redundancy. It is very common to use SSL VPNs for remote access, as they use HTTPS and usually work from almost anywhere. However, Sophos is one of the few vendors that implements SSL VPNs for site-to-site connectivity, but it provides a simple and effective way to configure secure access between sites. When a site-to-site VPN is established, whether it is IPsec or SSL, the routes between the local and remote networks are automatically configured on the XG firewall. No manual routes need to be created. There is a default VPN zone for simplifying secure remote connectivity, and it is the only zone that is not assigned a physical port or interface. Whenever a VPN connection is established, the port or interface used by the connection is automatically added to this zone, and when the VPN is disconnected, the port is automatically removed from the zone. Like all other default zones, scanning and access policies can be applied to the traffic for this zone. You cannot, however, edit this zone. Before you can configure an IPsec connection, you need to create an IPsec policy that defines the encryption and authentication algorithms and other settings that will be used. Sophos XG Firewall includes a number of pre-configured IPsec policies that can be used out of the box to simplify this. IPsec VPN policies can be configured in Configure VPN IPsec Policies. By creating IPsec policies at a global level, it makes it quicker to configure multiple VPNs and makes updating or modifying the configuration easier. When creating a policy, it is important to remember that both sides of the VPN connection must have the same settings to be able to successfully negotiate a connection. The table here shows the pre-configured IPsec policies that are included with the XG firewall. Custom policies can also be created for compatibility with other products, or if the predefined security policies do not meet your company's security requirements. The XG Firewall includes a VPN connection wizard that will guide you step by step through the configuration, displaying additional information about the configuration parameters. You will go through the configuration of VPN connections during the labs for this module. For more information on configuring IPsec VPN policies, please see the supplementary document in the lesson contents of this module. The XG Firewall includes a VPN connection wizard that will guide you step by step through the configuration, displaying additional information about the configuration parameters on the left-hand side of the window. Let's look at how all of this works with a simulation. This simulation will show the Sophos XG Firewall IPsec VPN wizard. Review the information at each stage and then click in the orange box to advance to the next slide. The SSL site-to-site VPNs are implemented using a client-server configuration where each end of the tunnel has a distinct role. The client end will always initiate the connection to the server, and the server will always respond to client requests. This is different from IPsec, where normally either end can initiate a connection. The configuration is done in 3 steps. 1. On the server, create a connection by selecting the networks that will be local and remote to the server. 2. Download the configuration file. And 3. On the client side, create a connection by uploading the configuration file. You will work through the configuration of site-to-site VPNs during the labs for this module. Sophos Remote Ethernet Devices, or RED, provide a simple way to connect remote sites to a central network securely by creating a Layer 2 tunnel. Installing the RED device on site requires no configuration or technical expertise. RED connections use a small hardware RED device at the remote location, and all configuration for that device is done locally at the XG Firewall. At the remote location, the RED requires a power connection, a network connection, a DHCP server to provide an IP address, DNS server, and default gateway, port 3400 TCP, port 3400 UDP for RED 10, and port 3410 UDP for RED 50 and RED 15. The RED 10 ceased sale on the 1st of November in 2015. However, they can still be used with Sophos XG Firewall. The RED 15 is the upgraded replacement for the RED 10, which offers up to 3 times the throughput and gigabit ports. The RED 15W has all the features of the RED 15 and also includes a built-in wireless access point. The RED 50 has two WAN ports which can be configured for load balancing and failover, and two USB ports which can be used to provide backup connectivity using UMTS. Other RED models have a single USB port. The RED 50's LAN ports can also be configured to support VLANs. The number of users that can be used with all of the RED models is unlimited, and the model selected is driven by the maximum throughput and other features. The administrator configures the RED on the Sophos XG firewall, setting its publicly resolvable hostname, IP address, and netmask of the RED interface on the firewall, and the RED ID, which is a 15-character string printed on a sticker on the base of the RED. The Sophos XG firewall then sends the configuration to the cloud-based provisioning server. Next, the RED is plugged in at the remote office and gets an IP address, DNS server, and gateway from the local DHCP server. The RED then connects to the provisioning server with its ID, and the provisioning server sends back the configuration that the RED needs to connect to the Sophos XG firewall at the central office. The provisioning server is no longer used from this point forward. Finally, the RED establishes a Layer 2 tunnel to the Sophos XG firewall using TCP 3400 and UDP port 3400 or 3410. There are three deployment modes for RED. In Standard Unified mode, the remote network is managed by the Sophos XG firewall, which serves as the DHCP server and the default gateway for all clients connecting through the RED. All traffic generated on the remote network is sent through the RED to the Sophos XG firewall. In Standard Split mode, the Sophos XG firewall still manages the remote network, acting as the DHCP server and default gateway. However, in this configuration, only traffic to defined networks is sent through the RED to the Sophos XG firewall, and all other traffic is sent directly to the Internet. In Transparent Split mode, the Sophos XG firewall doesn't manage the remote network, but is a member of it. The firewall gets its IP address from a DHCP server running on the remote network. Only traffic to defined networks is sent through the RED to the Sophos XG firewall, and all other traffic is sent directly to the Internet. As this mode of deployment does not require any readdressing, it is an easy way to connect networks following an acquisition or similar. In the case of Standard Split and Transparent Split deployment modes, the XG firewall does not provide any web filtering or other security to clients on the remote network. Please note that you still need to create security policies in order for the computers connected to the remote network to be able to interact with computers on the central office network. Before REDs can be added, RED management must be enabled on Sophos XG firewall in Configure, System Services, RED. Activating RED in Sophos XG firewall registers it with the provisioning service. You must include a valid email address when enabling RED, because the unlock codes for the REDs that you connect will be sent to it. An unlock code is a password that prevents an unauthorized someone from connecting your RED to their Sophos XG firewall. If you lose an unlock code, you will need to contact Sophos for assistance. Once enabled, there are two additional settings that can be configured. You can force REDs to use TLS 1.2, and this is recommended for security. Forcing TLS 1.2 is disabled by default as new REDs may not have a version of the firmware that supports it. You should connect your REDs and allow their firmware to update before returning to enable this option. Device deactivation will prevent any RED that is disconnected from the Sophos XG firewall for longer than the duration defined from being able to reconnect. This prevents a stolen RED from being plugged in on another network, potentially giving unauthorized access to your network. REDs are added as an interface on Sophos XG Firewall. This is done in Configure, Network, Interfaces. Over the next few slides, we will look at how to configure the RED for the 3 different deployment modes. Start by selecting the model of the RED you are configuring. The model selected determines the features that are available. Enter the RED ID from the sticker on the base of the device. This is a 15-character string. If this is not the first time the RED has been connected to a Sophos XG firewall, then you will need to enter the unlock code. New devices do not have an unlock code. You need to provide the public IP or host name of the Sophos XG firewall for the RED to connect to. You can optionally specify a second IP address or host name for all but the RED 10. This must be a second interface on the same XG firewall. You can then configure whether the second IP or host name should be used for failover or load balancing on the RED. If you are deploying the RED in a scenario where it cannot access the provisioning service, you can select to manually configure the RED via a USB stick. In this case, you would download the provisioning configuration file to a USB stick and ensure it is connected to the RED when the RED is booted. Important: if you are deploying via USB, you must ensure you do not lose the unlock code. In this scenario, the unlock code is never shared with the Sophos provisioning service. So if you lose the unlock code, the RED can never be connected to another Sophos XG firewall. Note, if you are deploying a RED in an environment which does not have an internet connection, you will need to configure the Sophos XG firewall as an NTP server for the RED. The RED WAN port is most commonly configured via DHCP, but it is possible to set a static IP address. If the RED is being provisioned via the provisioning service, it will still need to get a DHCP address to download the configuration before applying the static IP address. If a UMTS device is attached to the USB port of the RED, you can enable this as a failover WAN connection. All of the settings covered so far are common for all 3 modes of deployment. In the RED network settings, you can select the operation mode for the RED device, and depending on the mode you select, the options that need to be completed will be different. Standard Unified Mode forces all traffic that leaves the RED to pass through the XG firewall. This means that all traffic will be processed by the XG and any security modules that are configured. Also, the RED device will only accept traffic from the XG. It will not allow traffic from the internet into the local network. In Standard Unified Mode, you need to configure the IP address of the RED interface on the firewall, the zone of the network connected via the RED, and a DHCP server for the remote network. You can also optionally enable tunnel compression, which will compress all traffic that is sent through the RED tunnel. Data compression might increase the throughput of the red appliance in areas with a very slow internet connection. However, any performance increase mainly depends on the entropy of the data being sent. In some circumstances, it might therefore be possible that enabling data compression could actually reduce the throughput of the red appliance. In that case, disable data compression. Standard split is a mode where we define what traffic goes to the XG firewall. All other traffic is allowed out through the red to the internet. One important thing to remember is that the red device itself has no firewall or security capabilities. This means that the local machines need to have local protection such as software-based firewall, web protection, and antivirus in order to be secure. In standard split mode, you need to configure the IP address of the red interface on the firewall, the zone of the network connected via the red, a DHCP server for the remote network, and the network or networks for which traffic should be sent to the Sophos XG firewall by the red. All other traffic will be routed through the WAN port of the red. Transparent split configures the red device as a transparent bridge. This allows traffic to flow freely between the WAN and LAN ports on the device. The red device examines each packet that originates from the LAN ports, and if they match the split network setting, then they are forwarded to the XG for processing. Otherwise, the local devices have no idea that the red is sitting on the network. In transparent split mode, you need to configure the zone of the network connected via the red, the DNS server for the split networks, the split networks, which are networks that are accessed through the red tunnel from the remote site, and the split domains, which are domains that are accessed through the red tunnel from the remote site. You do not configure the IP address of the red interface on the Sophos XG firewall in this mode, as the firewall gets this from a DHCP server running on the remote network. Let's look at how all of this works with a simulation. This simulation will show how to add a red on the XG firewall. Review the information at each stage, and then click in the orange box to advance to the next slide. Complete the following tasks in Lab 4. Task 4.1, create an SSL site-to-site VPN. Task 4.2, create an IPsec site-to-site VPN. Prior to completing these tasks, you must have completed all steps up to the end of Lab 3, Task 3.9. On completion of this module, you should now be able to perform the actions shown here. Please take a moment to review these. If you are not confident that you have met these objectives, please review the material covered in this module. Click Continue when you are ready to proceed. Now that you have completed this module, you should complete Module 5, Authentication.